Welcome back, folks. Another episode of the Unlaced podcast. Again, before we start off, just want to thank all our subscribers, all our listeners out there. You guys are the heart and soul of this podcast. So appreciate all the support, all the words of wisdom coming in. And again, sharing it in the word of mouth is how we grow here. So just thank you again for all that support. And we'll continue to keep bringing weekly episodes with some of the superstar guests that we can find and some of the most interesting athletes out there. That we get our chance to have on the show. Today, I tell you what, I'm pretty pumped. Fletcher Chugga Roberts, 51 game AFL player, a premiership player for the Western Bulldogs, currently retired, but one of my best mates dating back to primary school. Fletch, how you going, mate?
Going well, thanks, Jackie. Living the dream, mate.
Living the dream.
Excited to be on the Unlaced podcast today.
Yeah, it's been, mate, like a few of the guests, it's been a long wait. To get you on, but we're finally here.
Yeah, really excited about it.
Oh, beautiful. Mate, so how's life since everything? I guess you've come out of the game the last few years, which we're going to touch on, but what have you been up to?
Yeah, so currently playing in the VFL still.
Yep.
Still enjoying my footy for Port Melbourne. So we're a couple of games
Borough?
into the year. The Borough, yeah, just around the corner. But yeah, really enjoying that. Good group of guys, good sort of coaches as well, and just enjoying my footy, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And then in terms of work, working for Ladder, which is the AFL Players organisation.
That's beautiful. We're going to touch on Ladder because that's an incredible organisation. That is the AFL's main charity, which Fletcher's just mentioned he's working at. But I do want to jump in to, I guess, a bit of our life together because it's been a while since we've caught up. And for those that don't know, we did go to primary school together, St. Patrick's, Murrumbeena, and I'm not going to gloat here for the pair of us, but there was only 250 kids at that school, very small primary school.
Yeah.
And in our year level, we had yourself, Seb Gotch, me, and a bunch of other boys who would pretty much, let's just say, didn't really care about education. We're all about sport.
You can say that. Don't tell our parents.
Yeah, don't tell our parents, although they're probably listening. But we had a really elite footy team and cricket team, so much so our cricket team came third in the state in grade 6.
I reckon it was second.
It was second? We lost to Geelong. They were like an IPL side.
They were like Geelong Grammar Primary School or something.
Yeah, storming down the pitch, hitting sixes.
Paying their players.
Yeah, but it was. So we connected there, and as I said, we had like 20, 30 kids in like grade 6, and somehow we came third in the state for cricket. But we also played together for the Holy Grail Murrumbeena Football Club.
Of course.
You remember those days?
Of course, yeah. Very, very good and memorable days down at Murrumbeena Junior Football Club.
Yeah.
Sort of having older brothers go through Murrumbeena. Always used to go and watch them when I was a little tacker, and then started playing quite early with my older brother Spencer. And that's where my love for footy started. And then playing with yourself, Matty Hamilton, Seb Gotch.
Matty Hamilton, shout out. What a player.
What a ledge. And just playing with a lot of good mates and schoolmates as well. Down at the Junior Footy Club were just, memorable days that I'll have for the rest of my life.
I do want to touch on, I guess, your family, but let's not get it twisted here. You were you're huge now, but I would say, how tall are you now? 6 foot?
6'5", nearly 6'6".
I'm gonna go on a limb here and say you're 5'11" at 12.
Yeah,
you were huge,
easily.
and
Gangly.
and not to discredit your footy ability because you were an elite in almost every area, but you dominated junior football. It made my job easy playing in the midfield, and Seb, who was little, who tried to take all the plaudits. But really, we had a guy who was winning every ruck contest. But can you tell me a little bit about your junior footy career? Mm-hmm. And you touched on your brothers there. Obviously, Nick, Nathan, Spence, 3 older brothers, so you're the youngest of 4 in a sense. Did that impact your footy and playing with them and then coming to play with us little tackers straight after?
I think my older brothers definitely drove me to have that competitive edge.
Yeah.
I think it was pretty rough playing in the backyard, whatever sport it was.
Yeah.
A few windows were broken, a few broken bones as well. Many fights between the brothers. But it was good. Yeah, I think they sort of mended and moulded me as a sports person to obviously have that drive and motivation to want to win. And seeing them all do different sort of sporting achievements before me, definitely shaped the way I was as a footballer. I think we always used to play a lot of competitive things, and yourself and Hamo and Jake, Gotchi, all used to come over and play in the backyard or over at the school.
Yeah, that's
right. And it got very competitive.
You used to live right as well. This is just for the listeners out there. I don't know, but we're going to touch on some of the interesting sporting stuff, but this is just how me and Fletch met, which is why we go back from the age of 8 or 9 years old. So it's know Fletcher inside out in his family, but you lived on the back of the primary school. So I remember you used to just jump the fence and you're at school.
Very handy.
Yeah,
very handy for a late wake up.
Yeah.
And also the weekend.
And the amount of footballs that would go in
schoolyard.
there, we didn't have to worry about knocking on the door. We'd just climb over and get it. But
Yeah.
there is a lot more to you than obviously your footy career. And the footy career and the premiership medallion is something that's unbelievable. And having grown up with you, I can't wait to learn more about just in this show together because obviously we didn't really speak as much through that period. Not that there was anything to it, just because you were living one life and I was living another.
Yeah.
But more recently, you're actually doing, and people can probably hear you speak and how well you speak, but you're quite a educated human being.
Thank you.
Graduating from Deakin with a bachelor in psychology, and you're doing another degree now.
Mm-hmm.
Mate, what prompted you to dabble into that? And
I wish I could say it was my internal drive, but it was probably having my mum Margaret in my ear a lot of the time.
Good mother.
She, pretty much as soon as I got drafted in 2011, she was straight in my ear saying, "You never know how long sport or footy's going to last. Make sure you're getting your education in as well." And yeah, obviously managing that as much as you could through the footy. So that was probably a real positive of mum. She really wanted to push us boys to educate ourselves as much as possible. So straight when I was drafted, I started uni a couple of months later.
Really?
Starting the Bachelor of Psychology, yeah.
Wow. So a quick question on that is around when, because I know when my mum tried to push me down, you got to educate, you got to do other things. I'm aware that's going to help me, but at the same time, I didn't care because I'm like, I just want to play footy. I want to play soccer. Were you sort of open to it, or were you quite reluctant to get in that space?
Very early on, yes. So I think 2011 draft is around October, November, and the season starts, April the next year. In that sort of first 6 months, if not more, to sort of June in my first season, I was somewhat reluctant. But finally took the dive into study and education halfway through that year, starting in the back end of the semester and stuff like that. So, I was a little bit reluctant early, but the more I thought about it, and I think obviously with footy, and we were educated at footy to, think about education and life after footy because you never know how long it's going to last.
Did the Bulldogs push you towards that? I know they're affiliated with VU, but I mean, how are those did those doors open up through being a footballer?
Yeah, I think that VU partnership with Bulldogs has only sort of started in the last 5 years. Right, so when I first started, there wasn't much of a connection.
Right.
But the AFL and the AFLPA were pushing a lot of players coming into the competition to explore their education opportunities because I think at the time the average career was about 4 years.
Yeah,
and potentially is about 6 now. But I think because the life sort of journey of a footballer can only be 4 years. It can be 1 year. It can be 15.
Yeah.
It's very important that players sort of educate themselves and prepare for life after footy.
Are you glad you've done it now? Like knowing that you were a bit reluctant at the start, when you look back, you're like, thank fuck Marg was knocking on my door saying, you better do this.
Yeah, definitely. Real happy that I was able to sort of educate myself throughout playing footy. And I'm really lucky that we were able to get some sort of funding grants and stuff through the AFLPA, which was awesome, which obviously motivated me to stay with my study a lot more.
Well, that helps.
But there can be some difficulties with a lot of players in managing the study with being a professional sportsman. But I sort of saw it as like a release from footy at times. And on a day off, on a Wednesday, I'd go to Deakin University and, obviously embrace the uni lifestyle, which is a completely different world to a footy lifestyle, a footy bubble.
Yeah, a bit more of a release, no doubt. Now, being picked up was it you picked up in the preseason draft in 2012 for the Bulldogs?
Yep.
So prior to going into the AFL journey, you were playing for the Sandy Dragons. Mm-hmm. Now, can you give a bit of background to how that was? Because I do want to touch on the 2011 TAC Cup final, which is the Fletcher Roberts show. So we're going to give a bit of a plug to that. But do you want to tell us about those early years just before you jumped into the AFL?
Yep. So as we spoke about before, playing for Murrumbina Junior Football Club, for all the way from under 9s as a 6-year-old.
Yeah,
that
shows how tall you were.
I was quite tall, playing in the ruck, I think.
Like driving
3 years
to the ground.
I had a bit of a stubble there. Played Murrumbina all throughout juniors, and then around under 15, 16s, you go into Sandy Dragons or TAC development squads. So
Like a
started
rep
playing.
side, right?
Yeah, rep side. So started playing with Sandy in your under 15, 16s, and then when you get into 17, 18 years of age, year 11, year 12, that's when you start playing in the TAC main competition,
Yeah.
now called the NAB League, I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
And yeah, so I was aligned with Sandy Dragons, as were my older brothers before me. And yeah, I think it's a tough balance in year 12, with all the sport that you do and education and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But really loved my time at Sandy Dragons. Had a great bunch of blokes. We sort of were underdogs for a little bit of the season, and towards the end of the year, we knew we had a really good squad. But there was a little bit of doubt around us leading into the finals. But we were able to get the job done at the end of the day,
Get
which
the
was
chocolates.
nice. Yeah.
Well, so the Sandy Dragons and also Oakley Chargers, which are more sort of on the southeast side of Melbourne, they're renowned for having a lot of draft picks come out of those teams every year.
Mhm.
So to get into those squads in itself is quite an achievement, let alone to go to the AFL, because the amount of players, if you look back over time, that have been elite in the AFL that have played for Sandy or Oakley is ridiculous. But touching on that game, were you a sure thing to go to the AFL prior to the final? I mean,
Nah, not at all. A lot of my under 18 year, there was many doubters.
Yeah.
Had met with a few clubs.
Were you one of those doubters as well?
Yeah, potentially. I think you start to doubt yourself
Yeah.
when you're told to improve different things here and there, and then there's always that self doubt that you need to sort of be able to push past and continue to believe in yourself, whatever level you play.
Yeah.
I think, and whatever sport it is. But yeah, I definitely don't think I was a shoo-in. Was actually playing quite poorly in the grand final in the first or second quarter, and had a good hard look at myself at halftime.
Wow.
And was able to have a more crucial sort of second half, and was able to play my role.
We'll touch
for
on
the
what
team.
that crucial second half and the humble role for the team was, but you kicked 4 in the last quarter. And won him the game. So, I mean, also, what position are you playing to be able to do that? Because for those that know you in the AFL system, you played as a backman. For me that knew you growing up, you played in the ruck, centre half forward, centre half back. So were you, where did you have a position back then? Because
so I was backup ruck.
Backup ruck.
Because I wasn't quite tall enough. I stopped growing. When I was 12. So backup ruck and also sort of forward line as well, key position, but also like a third tall in between. And yeah, I think it was in the third quarter I was able to play forward a little bit deeper into the quarter and kicked a goal. Was sort of starting to feel the groove and that sort of stuff. And then coaches are like, we're playing you at full forward for the last quarter.
Did that last quarter get you over the line to get to the AFL, do you think? Was that sort of like a big game player, or did you just think it would have assisted, obviously?
Yeah. I think it did help. I think I had some clubs that were interested, and then I think always playing quite well in a, even though it was the second half, in a big sort of game, always
says a
bodes
lot,
well.
right?
Yeah.
So tell me about how the draft process came for you and how it became the Bulldogs that you landed at.
Okay. It was quite an interesting journey through that whole under 18 year. You obviously playing at Sandy Dragons. You get sent. I think we used to get sent sort of surveys from different AFL clubs at times to sort of find out a bit more about ourselves as a human being. I don't know if that's still the process, but it was then. So I got 12, 13 different clubs sending me surveys. I think they just send it out to most players. But then a couple of other clubs were quite keen and came over for, like cup of tea and that sort of stuff.
Came to your house?
Yeah, came to the house with mum and dad and myself.
Which clubs were the ones knocking on the door?
It was Bulldogs and Melbourne.
Melbourne?
Pretty sure,
so you're going to be local. That's handy.
Yeah, and obviously having 3 older brothers still living at home at the time, they were in the front room all looking
intimidating.
all pretty much looking through the window out to the back room. And
I can imagine if Nate's greeting them at the door, they said, well, we better draft this kid. And they go, no, Fletcher's in the other room.
No, wrong kid. So you do a few interviews, come to sort of draft camp or rookie screenings and that sort of stuff, and try to test the best you can. And that was about a week after the TAC Grand Final, so I wasn't really testing that well. And I don't think athleticism's ever really been my strength.
To be fair, knowing you, and I'm not going to say I agree with it because you played in the AFL, and obviously you are athletic. But I remember you always actually, there was a point in your junior career, and I reckon it might have been Matty Hamilton led you onto this because he was one of our mates who played with us in primary school and at Murrumbina. But he was a great runner. Like he did little aths and all that sort of running stuff. And I remember you like something flicked in you where you're like, I need to either train with him or run with him. And I don't know if that changed your perception of how you need to work, but I remember you having like an emphasis on like, well, I'm a shit runner. Yeah. This is the only way I'm going to get better is going and training with Matty.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah. Yeah, it was around 15.
15.
Probably
right?
when the reps sides started.
Yeah.
I was sort of comparing myself to other similar players. That was one area of sort of weakness or improvement that was needed. So, yeah, started doing athletics more competitively and running down with Matty Hamilton and Rod Kelly. Shout out to Rocket, absolute star. So, yeah, doing more running training, which was, pretty crucial to me improving that. I'm still not the greatest, but was able to get to a level that was, acceptable.
Awesome. So when you go when you get the call preseason draft, so explain what the preseason draft is for those.
So I don't think it's a thing anymore.
Yeah.
So it was, if you didn't get picked up in the draft, they were like, or people didn't take a pick in the draft, there was the preseason draft 2 weeks later, and the preseason draft was like the same time as the rookie. So in my year 12 year, the draft happened, didn't go to plan. Wasn't picked up, obviously, was on the phone.
Did you think that was it then at that point?
It's probably one of the thoughts that goes through your head. The other thought was, all right, let's book schoolies.
Why not?
Let's book schoolies. And I was actually, calling all my mates and stuff to be like, where are we staying? What are we doing? What flight? Blah, blah, blah. And got a call from Melbourne to go down and train with them for the lead up into the next sort of draft period. Okay. Which was the 2 weeks when all my friends were on on schoolies, sorry. So I couldn't resist that opportunity.
So you trained with Melbourne before the preseason draft?
Yeah, to try and get a position on their rookie list, which was available. And so, I trained for 2 weeks, playing forward and back for them in a few like little practice matches, and actually played all right. And I think a few Bulldog scouts were there watching.
Right.
And then it came, those 2 weeks went pretty quickly. And it came up to the preseason / rookie draft. And Bulldogs had a pick 11 in the preseason draft, and then Melbourne had a rookie pick the next pick or a couple of picks later. And I think I got a call from Simon Dalrymple, who was the head recruiter for the Bulldogs at the time, the night before the draft, and he's like, all the best in your future. Good luck, whatever happens, and this sort of stuff. No indication or whatsoever.
So is this the guy that would pick you up? What's his
the
name?
Next day, Simon Dalrymple. I think he's now at Sydney. Great fella, and there was no indication at all there. So I'm like, I don't think the Dogs are.
So you thought it was Melbourne, if anything?
Yeah, Melbourne, if anything. And then they weren't really clear with what they were going to do. So I went into the next day pretty blind, not drunk, but blind on what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And then, the Bulldogs picked me up, and we had to watch it on a computer screen that was updated and refreshed every couple of minutes. So I was watching that with my brother, and then, name popped up, pick 11, preseason draft. And, we went pretty crazy and,
Simon Dalrymple, what a pickup. Yeah. Based off that story, missed in the draft, training with Melbourne 2 weeks before the preseason draft. Bulldogs have given him the, mate, good luck. And then they picked him up, fast forward, 5 or 6 years, and he's a premiership player for the club. That is phenomenal.
And Wayne McGraw as well.
Wayne McGraw, can't forget you. Not that I know you, but that is that is phenomenal. That is a really fascinating story. So when you say pick 11, the preseason draft, that's actually on an AFL list. That's not a rookie player, right?
Yeah. So preseasons back then, preseason picks were pretty much you got two years, just like a normal draft pick. So you got the 2-year contract to prove yourself, whereas a rookie, you only really had 1 year, which was probably a good thing for me in the end, being more of a development player or seen as a development player straight off the bat.
Mate, so you're there, you were at the Bulldogs, you got picked up in the 2012 preseason draft. You were there for 8 years, roughly, 8 seasons in the AFL. Now, people say you only played 51 games, which across an 8-year period is it's a lot of games at the highest level, but ultimately across that period, there's probably a lot of games you missed, which is fascinating for me because I do want to go into this journey of, I can imagine that's not easy, but at the same time, you've won a premiership, which anyone who plays footy at any level wants to win. It doesn't matter who you are. So I actually think it's a little bit arrogant, that statistic, if you ask me. 51 games, 1 flag, and retired. When I go for St Kilda, who haven't won a flag since 66, and we've got blokes like Robert Harvey who played 370 games and can't win one. Mate, it's pretty amazing. But can you take me to what the early days were like for you at the Western Bulldogs and coming into like an AFL environment? Must have been pretty special.
Yeah, definitely. I sort of having an older brother who had a few mates in the industry and looking up to them and then being able to be sort of one of them as an AFL player is something sort of special. And it's a quite a different world, the footy industry or a sporting industry when you get to the professional sort of level. But yeah, I look back on it with obviously great memories and being able to sort of play the sport you love and you've grown up loving and get paid for it as your job. It's pretty cool, pretty special.
Did you find it tough, particularly early? And I know we spoke of this before we came on. It was like the mental strain of being in a team one week and not the next for like a long period of time. I don't care what anyone says. It's a head fuck. It's like being in a bad relationship and just going up and down in a roller coaster. And you're like, what is going on? But did you find that tough coming into that and experiencing that when you were so elite for so long at junior footy and almost like the main person in every team you played at?
Yeah, it's a big challenge for a lot of sports men and women. The ups and downs and the roller coaster, as they say, of professional sport. I think for me, studying psychology at the time, some of the learnings I had there were able to translate into some of my dealings with footy. And I think that really helped me around mindset. So when it wasn't going my way and I potentially got dropped one week, I was able to stay positive and go back to VFL level and play really well and be really consistent. And I think that was probably a strength of mine over all my years of footy, was being able to, receive some negative feedback or not so great news and then go back to VFL level and really play my role for the team and play well and just keep knocking on the door.
Mate, that's what I say. There's no trophy for that.
Yeah.
There's no trophy for that, and that is one of the hardest things to do. I don't care what anyone says. When you are a high-level performing athlete and you get put in the reserves, I mean, there's multiple reactions you can have, but that hurts anyone's ego, especially when you're playing at the highest level and you probably think you're good enough and you've been playing at that level and you, for reasons that sometimes are not performance-based, you're not playing in the ones. I've self-imploded in the reserves multiple times, so I know what it's like. But did you had periods of obviously consistent footy at the Bulldogs? I mean, with that sort of, that must have been fulfilling as well to see, you can hold your own at the highest level. Yeah.
I think both 2015 and 2016, I had somewhat limited pre-seasons coming back from surgeries in the off-season. So I had like slower starts to the year, but after 4 or 5 rounds in both those years, 15 and 16, I was able to get more consistent AFL footy going and some good form, which obviously was able to be rewarded with the finals in 2016,
Mate,
which was awesome.
A crazy period, a bit of a whirlwind. Can we go back to that season? Because I think when I look back on that year, no one at the start of the year, and maybe this is separate to you guys internally, but no one probably would have gone, Bulldogs are a shoo-in to win this. You guys did a phenomenal job of almost getting to a position for you guys to win it and executing and like just beating some of the top dogs to get there. But was there ever a feeling inside that you guys thought you could do it?
Yeah, I think that was a real common feeling across the whole playing group, coaching staff. We had a lot of positivity around. We knew that if we played our best, we could beat any team. And particularly towards the back end of the year, we'd beaten a few of the teams that were sort of the favourites for the final and that sort of stuff. We'd beaten them at their own home ground a couple of times throughout the year. And even though we were sort of injury rattled at times with a few big key injuries, who stayed around the group and were really positive for everyone, we had a really positive mindset. We just sort of kept rolling with the punches and just had
so
a
there
lot
was
of
that
momentum.
collective belief because it was a relatively young team. I mean, there was a lot of I mean, yourself included, but there was a lot of guys in their first 2 or 3 years that were premiership players after that season, which is when you look at some of the players, the journeys they have to go to get that, it's a lot longer than that.
Yeah.
But into your individual journey across that squad through that year. I mean, can you tell us a little bit about your season? Because what's most memorable to me is, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but the first final or the first few sort of games leading to the back end, you weren't really involved, and then you got an opportunity in the prelim, and it stuck, and you kind of like. Not the Stephen Bradbury, because you deserve to be there. But there's an element of he's come in at the right time and he's got the gold.
Yeah. So, as I said just before, 2016 was probably my most consistent year of footy. Started off a little bit slower in the VFL for the first few rounds, and then worked my way into the senior team from about round 5, 6 onwards, and then pretty much played, I think it was 16 straight towards the second half of the AFL season.
Wow.
Which is, probably my most consistent run of
That's a lot of games.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I had a few sort of issues with my hips and that sort of stuff, but was able to sort of deal with them and keep moving on and keep playing some pretty good footy for the team. And then it came to round 23 against Fremantle over there, which was our last game for the year before finals.
And you're playing in the back line this whole year. You've made this transition. Before you jump into that, what point did that become like cemented that you're a back line?
So drafted as a forward.
Yeah.
And then the last practice match of my first preseason, they needed a tall defender, so they just threw me back and actually played all right. And then that was pretty much
stuck.
That was pretty much it. They're like, "You'll be playing back from now on."
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I didn't see much of the forward line at all. So it's all
right.
right.
Well, fast track back to Freo, round 23.
Yeah. So Matty Pavlich's 350th game or whatever. I get Fletcher, you'll be on Pav. I'm like, oh, awesome. And crowd was going wild for him. He kicked a couple of goals that I potentially could have stopped. So it wasn't my greatest game. And then we had a few injuries out who were probably looking likely to come back for that first final. So then after the Freo game, we had the bye. And then leading into the first final, which was against West Coast over there, the 3 sort of injuries that we had all came straight back in, and I was pushed out of the side for that first final, which, it was a bit annoying, but I think I quickly wrapped my head around the fact that I can't change the decision.
Yeah,
I've just got to go about, getting around the boys, being positive and playing well at VFL level when the time came, so that I can keep knocking on the door, as they say.
That's a mental, amazing, I guess, mental strength to think that way straight away, because some perspective would be, and this is why I think I wanted just to tap in on this, because I reckon your mental strength and resilience is definitely a strong point of who you are, and it's exemplified in this whole process, because if you're getting dropped a week out from the finals and your team wins the grand final, pretty much they're not going to change that team. They're not going to change a winning team in a final series. So you're almost calling yourself out for the finals.
Yeah.
So to think like, well, I can still be a chance to knock on the door, and then to get an opportunity and actually come in and perform and do a job. That is like, a lot of fans I don't think would really look that deeply at sport, because they don't have to. They just look at the results.
Yeah.
But when you're a player and you're in it and you're around guys that go in and out and through that position, that takes a lot of fucking mental strength, because you're in a washing machine on the biggest stage of the world, of the game in the world, because it is in this country, and you've got to come in and perform straight away after being dropped.
Yeah.
And if you don't play good, you may not play in the biggest game of your life, which is the grand final.
Yeah, the one you grew up dreaming about.
Yeah.
Pretty much. But yeah, I think, I was able to wrap my head around it quite quickly. Which was, probably a strength of mine, as you said, the resilience and mental strength. And then throughout that sort of first couple of weeks where the AFL side played West Coast over there and Hawthorn at the G, I was in the VFL the day after.
Okay.
And just, kept playing well and just putting my best foot forward. That's all I could really do. And I think that was, able to reflect sort of how I dealt with it and then responded with playing really well in the VFL. And I think that was a real strength of mine, being able to just be right there in case something happened and
letting them know that you're ready.
Yeah, that I'm ready to go and in good form and whatever it may be. And then that opportunity came when Matty Suckling had a bit of Achilles soreness after the semi, leading into the prelim, and we were coming up against GWS, who were quite a tall forward line, which probably played into my favour as well. And Suckers was ruled out at the end of the main session on the Thursday, and they're like, Fletch, you'll be playing. You've been in good form. Take what you've been doing in the VFL into the prelim, which was,
different
I'm
stage.
like, just a little bit.
Yeah.
But so that was really positive and gave me a lot of confidence to go into that.
So the Thursday leading into the prelim is when you found out. So you didn't really have much time mentally to prepare for playing that, which
Yeah,
might
not
have been
much.
good as well, because
Yeah,
then
it
you couldn't
probably was,
overthink.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you've got to play now. There's no. But that you just mentioned GWS. That was away.
Yep. Yeah, so up at Spotless Stadium, GWS home ground. Yeah, told I was playing on the Thursday. Flew up the Friday morning, and then playing. I think it was Saturday afternoon on the sort of what was it 5 p.m. time slot. It's quite a weird time slot, but we had a lot of Bulldogs fans travel up, which really made a lot of gave us a lot of confidence as players, and the love and support we had there was just immense.
Did you, after winning that, did you think you were definitely going to be 100% playing in the grand final, or was there like,
no, there was
this
a lot
bloke
of
could
doubt.
come back? Like, so you actually thought, I've gone in, done a role, helped the team to get to this position, and I could miss out.
Yeah, funny little anecdote there as well is, celebrating first prelim win in a long time for
because the Bulldogs they had a 54-year drought, right, to win a flag at this point too, which I think, 64. I don't know if that was it 64, sorry. So I don't know, I don't know, I better get that right, mate. But I think they were the second longest, or were they the longest more than St Kilda? When was their last flag prior? I can't remember. It was one of the two, because I remember when you won, it's like, well, St Kilda's now the freaking longest. Here we go.
That's it.
So there was a nervous point for you.
Well, yeah, like we obviously celebrated on the ground, or cuddles and that sort of stuff, and then walking in to sing the song, all like family and friends were in this little hallway leading into the rooms, and even in the rooms. And I just remember someone saying to me, I can't remember who it was, but they're like, "Oh, really great game. Hope you keep your spot for next week."
Oh, dude, who the fuck has said that? Give me a moment,
saying,
you bastard.
Yeah, I know. Saying it in a really nice way.
That's even worse.
Supportive way, but it just hit me. Just this flood of
condescending.
Like, oh, no. So that was before we even got to sing the song. But that was all right. I as soon as we finished singing the song, my head went straight into that thought.
Yeah, of course.
For the next 5 days.
Yeah.
Which is, fair enough. And I think that's natural from, us to respond that way. But, I think I was quite nervous leading into the granny, leading up until the Thursday of the last session, when Bevo came up to me just before the session and said, we're really proud with how you came into the team. You played with a lot of confidence. We're going to stick with you this week. You're playing in the grand final. Which is,
mate, that gave me goosebumps.
Yeah, I know.
That is unbelievable.
Me as well. And like a lot of the boys' teammates were, hanging around waiting for that. I think I was sort of the one that was any uncertainty was around me, and whether the boys would be right to play or whatever it was. And so everyone was sort of waiting for me to find out, and got a lot of questions. You heard yet? I'm like, nah, stop asking me.
Oh my gosh.
I'm already not sleeping.
Oh my gosh.
And then, so it was good that all the boys got around me when they found out. And it was awesome.
Mate, that is fascinating insight. And the Bulldogs went on to win that grand final in one of the most entertaining finals you'll ever see. A Tom Boyd kick from 60, which pretty much he's practically retired as well from that. And it's arguably one of the most important kicks in Western Bulldogs history, that moment. But winning that premiership, what was that like?
Yeah, another actually real cool memory that I do have. For some reason, I don't remember much of grand final day, whether it's the emotions or whatever else. But
it's a crazy week as well leading up to it, like the parade, and obviously it's not a normal week leading into a game.
Completely different. Yeah. So it can sort of stuff up with your preparation a little bit. But I remember walking out to do the final warm up before the game started, and we were down this little race, and you could see the top side of the other side of the ground stadium. And you could just see Bulldogs fans in the highest of the highest row, not an empty seat in the house. And I was just like, oh, wow, this is epic. Walking out onto the MCG, full crowd. You don't see a spare seat in the house.
That's insane.
You got your red and white sections, you got your blue, red and white sections, and a lot of neutral fans that became Bulldogs fans for the day, which was awesome, and we appreciated.
Yeah.
But just that memory of walking out onto the ground was...
Is that what sticks out the most?
Yeah,
it's
just imprinted in my memory, which is pretty cool, special memory to have. And then Tommy Boyd and I actually did our warm-up kick together I don't think we hit a target. We were quite nervous. I remember about 10 kicks each to each other over about 30 metres.
The ball would have felt like an orange, right?
Every single one hit the ground or went over their head. And then we still got around each other. Yeah, really good warm-up, mate. Really good warm-up. Which you have to, just to stay confident. But, and then siren sounded and game on. And yeah, don't remember much of the game.
It'd be a blur, wouldn't it?
Yeah, all a blur.
But it's still, it's probably a blur for fans. It was that emotional, like the roller coaster of the wave. But this is what's fascinating, right? That is bucket list. Like when you're playing at Murrumbina Football Club, playing for St. Pat's, even like I think of like Chris and Marg, your mum and dad at this point. They imagine them going to all these footy games and then seeing you play in the MCG and win a flag. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, pretty crazy.
It's pretty crazy, right?
Yeah.
But look, this is also why it's fascinating to me. We talk about the highs and lows of footy, and initially, prior to probably that 2015 season, you said is when you started to get some more consistent game time.
Mm-hmm.
You've been in that roller coaster in and out of you're not sure whether you're going to play. You're second guessing maybe even your ability at times because you're like, well, I've been a forward and a ruckman my whole life. Now I'm playing as a back, and now I've got to redefine myself. And then I've got to go through this process of like, I'm not the best player here, like I've always been.
Yeah.
Which is not like some people like, but I think for, other people, when you're used to it, it's just like you thrive off that. Your personality thrives off that on and off the field.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then you win the premiership, which is just insane. And you have like one of the best years of your life. At what point for you did it start to kind of change your mentality of like, maybe footy is not what I want to do going forward?
It's a tough one. Like footy and sport in general. A lot of the time there's potentially more downs than ups. And like you need to make the most of the ups across your career. And a lot of my career were potentially downs until the ultimate up, which I'm very, very grateful for. But then it's a very sort of difficult lifestyle to live at times, and sometimes you don't get it right, sometimes you do. It's all about that balance. But I think for a lot of players, you need to invest in your life away from footy because it's a larger part of your life. Like footy or professional sport is a small period or small career. You've got a lot of time in life to put your time and energy into other things.
And this is what we spoke of this as well, and I think this is why I'm very impressed, and we're going to spend sort of the last segment of this podcast talking about what you do now. But as you sort of came out of that journey of footy, at what point did you make the decision that you were going to sort of jump off?
It was probably more made for me. I don't think my form was the greatest. I think the Dogs were probably heading in a different direction to where my sort of footy lay. No sort of other opportunities were coming up as much. I think it was more pushed out the door.
So you kind of accepted your fate a little bit.
Yeah, I think having greater sort of self-awareness throughout my footy days and being able to spend 8 years in the league, you sort of understand the system a lot more. Probably wrap my head around it. Unfortunately, as though it was, it's just the industry. And
I don't want to discredit the amount of time you played in the AFL because I know I talk about you only played 51 games, which is fucking a lot of games.
Yeah,
but the average life cycle of any professional athlete and AFL player is cut that in half easily, if not less.
Yeah.
So to play 8 years at the highest level is a tremendous effort, and it's a long time in anything. But we've spoken of this before, and I think you've went through that process, and I'm really interested to hear what that process was like for you. But almost like that self-discovery of the footy journey's done now. Who is Fletcher Roberts outside of that world? Like, can you give us a bit of background on? Because I can imagine that wouldn't have been easy, right?
Nah,
lifting the Premiership Cup a couple of years before, and then you're not in you're not on a list.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting journey. Can be very challenging at times. I think at the end of 2019, when my time was done at the Dogs, between then and with obviously COVID and this sort of stuff happening as well, it made it a little bit harder. But I think that first 6 months, 12 months from sort of November 2019 to 2020, I've learnt more about myself across that period than I did pretty much the rest of my life. So it's quite interesting. I answered a question about this the other day that it's weird you spend a lot of time in like one particular industry and then as soon as you're out of it, it can go a lot of different ways. But you obviously find out a lot about yourself and your true character and yeah, what you sort of like and dislike. And it's weird because you're sort of wrapped in a bubble when you're playing professional sport.
Yeah.
And then that journey, it's quite an interesting journey as soon as you finish to see where you're headed next.
What were some of the, if you don't mind sharing, what were some of the key things that you learnt like that outside of football you didn't realise?
So, yeah, I did Bachelor of Psych while playing footy, finished that at the end of 2019 as well. And I'm not really using it as much as I would have liked or I had planned to, which is why I'm also doing a Bachelor of Business now at the moment with Victoria Uni.
Yep.
Just because sort of keeping my options varied and open.
Shout out VU, good university.
Of course.
Right.
But, yeah, so like I think I sort of tried to figure out where my path lay ahead.
There you go.
Siri, thank you. But yeah, I think the discovery around where my path lay going forward was quite an interesting one. Was able to get employment with Ladder in a part-time role, but then also was going to play VFL with Essendon and also do a player welfare and player development role there as well in a little bit of the VFL and AFL, which was a pretty cool role. But unfortunately, COVID cut that. So my role just went to part-time with Ladder and the work we do there, which then has merged into a full-time role.
Beautiful.
But yeah, I think the big one is just learning about yourself. It's awesome.
Definitely.
Good journey.
Do you think sort of your journey in the AFL, having its highs and lows, as you mentioned, created that interest in mindset and mental health?
Mm-hmm.
Of obviously the work you're doing now, is that what drove you to maybe being more passionate in this space?
Yeah, definitely. I think also with a bit of the psych degree that I was doing as well, understanding those concepts a little bit more and how to sort of deal with it at times really reflected in my footy and dealing with a lot of teammates that had struggles at times. And I think my sort of positive strength in life is being able to build really good relationships with teammates. So a lot of times the ups and downs of footy, as we've spoken about, can take a toll. And being able to support myself, one, and also support others around me, teammates who had some issues with mental health, was something I really take pride in and really enjoy helping them sort of look after themselves.
So when you say you're helping teammates, is this when you're at the Bulldogs? Is this when you're in sort of the VFL doing your sort of dual role with Essendon?
Yeah, both.
Really? Wow.
Obviously, yeah, in the AFL, helping more just from a friend point of view, but going the extra mile at times.
So when you're at the Bulldogs
players
in the change room, are you a bloke sort of putting their hands up saying, mate, I'm not doing too well in this area? Or are you just identifying that someone's struggling and you kind of go and put your arm around them a little bit?
Bit of both. I think my social awareness is quite a strength as well. So I can sort of see when blokes are not being them normal selves. Because you spend every day with each other, you see what they're like, and then when they're not like that, you're like, oh, you're going all right.
And a lot of blokes try and hide it too, because there's obviously a stigma and a personality. And for me, I found as well, if ever sometimes stuff wasn't going well in like day-to-day life, my release was going to the footy club or the soccer club to get to break away from it. So some people, you don't always get to see the full picture with people. So I think that's pretty incredible.
And the great thing is the stigma's been broken down quite a bit at the moment with a lot of players, saying they've had some struggles. I think Baslenka came out.
Yeah.
Bailey Smith
came out.
Recently and talked about some of his struggles, which is, really, really powerful, and well done to Baz for getting out there and
shout out,
mate, sharing that.
That's amazing. And that helps other players as well. I think what Tom Boyd did is
exactly,
really,
Tom,
provided
huge.
a path for that too. But I do want to touch on Ladder and the work you're doing now, because having done a bit of research about this organisation, which I'd love you to talk about, it is really fascinating. But Ladder, for those who don't know, is the AFL's official charity.
Yep. AFL Players,
AFL Players' official charity. So care to just give us a bit of background into what the organisation does and your role within it?
Yep. So, as we just spoke about, Ladder is the official charity of the AFL Players. We help young people aged sort of 14 to 25, in between that bracket, who are struggling in different areas of life. So we run programs, whether it be in Latrobe Valley down in Gippsland, in Sydney, or online, and sort of a lot of different other areas that I'm sort of looking after at the moment. We run programs around health and wellbeing, community connection, independent living skills, and also education, training and employment. So depending on which program you fit into, you can focus on things like mental health or employment, sort of job interview practice and resume, cover letter, all things preparing you for employment and helping you find employment. And then also the community connection piece, just finding connection with and that social connection piece with different crowds is really important, and something we found was quite powerful with our programs across the COVID period. People would come to our programs to find that social connection and, have someone there as like a mentor to help them out and deal with their health.
Is it a few things on that? So when you're running these programs, are you orientating like footy as part of this social connection, or is it separate to sort of having sport? Is it more conversation based? How does that work?
Yeah, it's very conversation based.
Okay.
But because we are the AFL Players Charity, we get a lot of AFL engagement.
Right.
So a lot of players help us out with videos or, jumping on a Zoom call
Mentorship
or coming.
and stuff.
Yeah, mentorship as well. So it's really powerful. It's sort of, centered a little bit around the AFL industry and having these great positive mentors to help the young people that we deal with.
Wow. So, and then when you talk about some of the younger people that you're dealing with, how do you sort of identify where there's challenges? Or is it you working with separate organisations? Are people knocking on ladders' doors saying, hey, there's some troubled kids out here, we'd love your help? Or how does that work?
Yeah, so we get a lot of referrals from those organisations you just mentioned, Jakey. They sort of come to us thinking that our program might be suited to the young people that they're dealing with.
Right. Gotcha.
And then they come into our programs. That's the most natural pathway.
Mate, that must be so fulfilling. Like, what a change in paths. Like, did you ever think you'd be working in like almost like that youth empowerment sort of, support mentorship kind of role?
Yeah, somewhat. Towards the end of probably my career, I did some mentoring. I was actually a mentor for Ladder and their young people while I was playing.
Right,
so
got you.
Starting in 2014, I've been mentoring a couple of young people. So that's sort of where my journey with Ladder started. And then at the end of 2019, start of 2020, it was more employment there.
Right,
which has been a great journey.
Mate, phenomenal story. Phenomenal story. And it seems like you found a bit more of your calling based on what you were saying you're naturally doing in a change room, that sort of guidance and supporting, having an eye for where you can help. I'm always fascinated when you come out of sport and playing at the highest level that you did, like the skill sets. I always talk about the transferable skills that come with it that we're not even aware of.
Yeah.
But have you found some of the fundamentals of being an AFL footballer and have now how you operate day to day have really helped you?
Yeah, I think public speaking is probably one. You do a lot of that stuff.
Mate.
You do a lot of that stuff with sport.
Yeah.
When you're placed in those situations, and then that sort of has helped me with the programs that I run, particularly in person, being able to present to a group and sort of hit the learning outcomes that we're aiming for. Has been a strength. Communication in line with that. I think sort of my resilience. There's different challenges that you face in life. That sort of has been moulded while I played footy, and now it's sort of coming out in some of the work that I do and just life in general, which is what you spoke about earlier and huge.
Yeah, the discipline. I think just that element of like you've got to be here on this time and you've got to perform and do this. If you don't communicate, you won't. Like all those things, they eventually transcend into other things that you have to do, which is fascinating. But mate, Fletcher Chogger Roberts, still the name Chogger. Don't know where it came from. I think it was Phil Brammer, under 9 coach. It stuck for some time.
It was before that.
It was before that?
It was, I used to have chubby cheeks.
Did you?
And my older brother Nathan, I'm pretty sure this is how it started, used to call me Chubber. And then one day Chogger slipped out.
And it came.
And then, Chogger stuck from like when I was 5 or something.
Great nickname. That's how I knew you. Before I knew Fletcher, I knew Chogger.
I'm pretty sure that junior sports people that I played with still probably think my first name's Chogger.
Just a quick question before we do sign out. Who was the best junior footballer you played with?
I know you paid me earlier to say you. Best junior footballer that I played with.
Could have gone to the AFL, could have not.
Played a lot. Jakey Barker-Daish is probably equal first.
Oh,
with you can't go past Seb Gotch.
Yeah, he was elite, wasn't he?
He was bloody good.
Pains me to say it.
Yeah, I know. He's so little smart-assy.
He still can't get on a roller coaster ride. He doesn't fit the height limit.
Yeah.
But
He'll text me.
Bloody good at
He'll text me when this comes out saying, thanks, mate.
No.
You owe me a beer, Seb.
In all seriousness, though, Fletch, it is one of the most fascinating stories. Having grown up with you as a kid and seeing what you achieved and having kind of been through a bit of a similar journey in myself of coming out of sport, maybe some would say prematurely and not necessarily always your decision. I know that's really hard. So to see you land on 2 feet and doing some great work now, mate, kudos to you.
Thank you.
Kudos to the family for raising a good kid. And shout out to Marg, Chris, Nath, Spence, Nick, a great family, the Roberts family. Hope you're all tuning in, and mate, it was a joy to have you on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. Great times.
Beautiful.